I'm going to recognize where I am. I'm not going to try to run away from it and ignore it. I'm going to face it. I'm going to accept it. I'm going to name it. I'm going to notice it.
This is what's happening to your body, and you know it's going to take a few minutes to be able to bring yourself back down.
I don't like how this feels, but I can do this. And if I allow myself to tolerate it, it will pass faster. Hey, pod people. Welcome to this week's episode of
Why Do People Do That?
So we are excited today to talk about anxiety.
Yeah.
Woo!
Anxiety.
Good stuff. So I was really motivated this week to talk about anxiety. I've been wanting to talk about it for a while,
Yes.
actually.
Yeah.
But I keep putting it off because other things come up. But I find often in my practice, patients will come in with anxiety, which is probably really one of the most
super common
issues walking through the door these days. It's always been an issue, but there's definitely an enormous uptick in it over the last few years, to say the least. However, I find it often that people will come in, they'll have anxiety, they will have been in treatment before for anxiety. It's not their first rodeo of coming into therapy and trying to work on their anxiety and tackle. They sometimes will say that they've been in therapy for anxiety on and off their whole life, or they've been anxiety for the last couple of years. They've been to a couple of different therapists. The case that really motivated me today was a kid who's, a teenager, and she's been in treatment for 10 years.
It's a long time
for her anxiety. And
for
it's
a
only, it's only progressively gotten worse over the years. And so what's my point? My point is what I find to be the most effective starting off point for people with anxiety is understanding what it is. And I hear way too often from my patients, not just mine, but even just from the practice as a whole, the patients that are coming in and seeing my other clinicians. Why didn't anyone ever explain this to me like that? Wow.
What, the definition of anxiety?
What is it?
So how do you explain it to a
What's
patient?
happening to me? Like just having a basic understanding of what is actually going on really helps people just to start off with, to just have peace and a little bit more of a sense of calm, because it takes away from the mystery of a lot of what's going on. And so I'll definitely talk about the science of it a little bit, but I want to really talk about it more in layman's terms in a way that like really everybody can understand.
Okay.
And I also want to talk about it in a way that parents can also then use to explain to their children. So if I get too sciencey, just reel me in. I'm going to try and not get too sciencey, but enough so that it makes sense. Okay. So to start, right, let's talk about a client that started with me recently who, has been in treatment for 10 years, right? Let's use her as an example to really understand anxiety in general. So she's coming into treatment and she explains to me that she's had panic attacks on and off her whole life, as far back as she can remember, really coming to a head in like second, third grade, around there.
Wow.
Started to have panic attacks in class and on field trips and things like that. And so what she describes is this general overwhelming feeling of fear. Something is wrong or something is going to happen. She can't really pinpoint what exactly, just this felt sense, just this feeling
sudden
of fear, this feeling of unsettlement, this feeling of anxiety, so we call. And so she describes it as, it could be a flutter in her stomach, it could be a throbbing pressure in her head, it could be sweating all of a sudden, just feeling dizzy, tunnel vision, nausea. Sometimes it happens all at once. Sometimes it happens a little bit at a time. Pressure in her chest, palpitating heart, sweaty palms, not two people experience anxiety the same way. Some people experience a lot of the physical symptoms. Some people experience some of the physical symptoms. For some people, it's just this generalized feeling of doom. Something bad's going to happen. And it's just this uneasy feeling in their body that could show up as shaky hands, right? Or just this pressure in their head, or just this feeling of floating.
Will I completely take you off track if I ask what the difference is between worry and anxiety? Because some of that sounds like the normal process of being worried about something. So what makes it anxiety versus worry?
Worry is a thought, right? Worry is a cognition. Worry is the act of thinking about something. Whereas anxiety is a feeling in the body that is really physiological. It's biological, right? So what's happening when somebody is experiencing all of these physical symptoms as opposed to somebody that has a worrisome thought? What's an example of a worry thought?
Oh, God, I'm under pressure now. I'm not going to get everything done for Christmas.
Right. So you could worry,
Mm-hmm.
right? You could say, oh, what if I don't get everything done for Christmas? Or what if I don't say the right thing on my podcast this evening and I sound like an idiot, right? Like that's worry. But the worrisome thought doesn't necessarily give you anxiety, right? Does that make sense?
It does.
Why do you look like you're pensive?
I am. I'm pensive. I'm thinking about that.
Process.
Yeah.
Give it a minute. It's a thought, right?
Mhm.
We sometimes have thoughts that create anxiety for us.
Okay.
And we sometimes have thoughts that are just thoughts and they don't create anxiety for us, right? Like I might have a worrisome thought. Like I might worry, my daughter stubbed her toe and texted me a couple of hours ago and said, I stubbed my toe really hard and it's really swollen and throbbing and it really hurts. This is like the worst a toe has ever hurt after stubbing it. And the first thought in my head was, damn it, we're going to Disney soon. And what if you broke your toe? Right. And now I'm not having anxiety about it. It's not making me sick. I'll deal with it. I'm worried about it. Like, oh, I hope she's okay. It's going to really suck if her toe is broken while we're in Disney. We'll deal with it, but that will suck, right? So I'm worried about it, but I'm not having anxiety about it, right? Like I'm not feeling it in my body. It's not bringing me into fight or flight, right? So for me, that's what the difference is, right? Anxiety is being in a state of fight or flight. You can worry about something without being in fight or flight.
Okay. That makes sense.
Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So all of these physiological symptoms that I just brought up, the sweaty palms or the sweating or the palpitating heart or feeling like you're breathing, all of these things are fight or flight. So what is fight or flight?
It's a physiological, like it's through the years, like it's our body's way of kind of defending ourselves. You sense danger and you have to kind of respond.
Right. So fight or flight is a biological response to a real threat. And we need fight or flight. Fight or flight is brilliance. It could keep us alive in a real dangerous situation, right? If we think about, all the little bunny rabbits that hop around our neighborhoods, right? You get a lot of bunnies in your neighborhood.
Bunnies.
I get a lot of bunnies in my neighborhood. And so, sometimes I'm taking a walk and I've got my dog on a leash and I see a little bunny and I'm like, oh, a little bunny. And my dog is just like, I'm going to catch that thing. And I'm like, no, you're not, because you're on a leash. I'm not letting you get it. Right. But my dog will start to very slowly. And he knows, my dog is smart enough, even though he's an idiot. He's smart enough to know he has to slowly, it's instinctual, right? I have to slowly creep up on this bunny or it's going to run away, right? Because my dog instinctually knows if the bunny hears it, right?
The bunny's going to run.
It's running away, right? And the bunny could be facing the other way, but it could just literally hear the crinkle of a leaf underneath my dog's foot. It hears, right? And it just hauls ass, right? That's fight or flight, right? It just flees. It's just like, I heard a sound. There could be a predator.
There's danger. I got to go.
There's danger. I got to go. And so it keeps that bunny alive, right? So think about fight or flight for us in terms of like Let's say you're vacationing in the Poconos and you're
Very
walking.
specific.
This is the example I like to use. You're walking through the forest. You're walking, it's a woodsy area in the Poconos, and you come across a big bear. Okay. You are going to go into fight or flight when you see that bear. That bear, you look at the bear sees you, you made eye contact with the bear. You are going to go into fight or flight. So now when you go into fight or flight, your body is physiologically preparing itself for the danger in front of it so that it has a better chance for survival. So what happens during fight or flight? Our breathing quickens, our lungs are actually taking in oxygen and letting out carbon dioxide at a faster pace. Our heart rate quickens. It's now pumping blood around the body at a faster pace. Now, let's just pause and talk about those two changes very quickly. What does that do for us? How does it help us that our breathing is quickened and that oxygen is being carried throughout our body at a faster pace? Any idea?
I'm not sure, but I'm sure you're going to tell me.
I would think
it would enable you to be able to either run or, to improve like muscle, your ability to kind of hit or defend yourself in some way.
So it allows you to run faster for longer periods of time, right? So somebody like me who can't run like 2 houses without being like, oh my God, right? Like I joke and I say I only run if someone's chasing me. And it's the truth, because the reality is if someone were chasing me, I would go into fight or flight and I would be able to run like a champ. But I can't do that on a regular basis because my body is not physiologically prepared for that run on a regular basis. I'm just not, right? So I would have a better shot at outrunning the bear in fight or flight. The other thing that the body does physiologically is it releases endorphins. What does endorphins do? It allows you to withstand pain. Right? So what if the bear, while you're running away, the bear swats at you and it scratches your back, right? And now you've got these.
Suck.
That would suck. That would be painful. But the reality is because of the release of the endorphins in your body.
You probably wouldn't notice.
Right, exactly.
And
you wouldn't notice
going.
that pain until later on when your body regulated itself and the endorphins were not as present. You would feel, I mean, have you ever experienced, or viewers at home, listeners at home, have you ever experienced, something painful happening, right? Like stubbing your toe or, banging into something or whatever, and then you don't feel the pain with such intensity until after the fact. All of a sudden it's throbbing. A lot of
It
times
takes some time to kind of register. And
because the endorphins, you don't
settle
have,
back in.
it settles back in. You don't have as much, that release is not as intense. And so you then start to experience the pain. The other chemical being released in your body is adrenaline, right? We've heard stories, amazing stories about.
Like the woman who can pick up like the Volkswagen when it's like on top of her kid.
Yes, that's adrenaline, right? That's Popeye, right? It's adrenaline actually makes us stronger, like for real, like we're stronger, right? So with the adrenaline and the endorphins and the quickened breathing and the palpitating heart carrying oxygen throughout your body, being able to run faster and for longer periods of time, being stronger and being able to withstand pain puts you in a position to have a better shot. I can't guarantee anything, people. So be careful if you're walking around in the Poconos.
It's not a guarantee that you'll beat the bear.
Not a guarantee, but you've got a better shot at being able to escape this bear encounter. Now, what happens if the bear that you encounter in the woodsy area of the Poconos ends up being your Uncle Joe in a bear costume? And now you've gone into fight or flight and you think that you're about to be attacked by a bear, but it turns out it's not a bear and you're not actually in danger. It was a false alarm.
I'm still freaked out that Uncle Joe is wearing a bear costume.
In the middle of the Poconos.
Yeah.
He followed you on your trip just to screw with you.
Can I use these endorphins and adrenaline to beat the hell out of Uncle Joe?
You can. That would actually be helpful. It would help regulate
That would
you.
regulate me a little bit.
Help regulate you. Yes. Yes. But now, point being, what happens when our body goes into fight or flight? Because our brain sensed that we were in danger, but we're not actually in danger.
So like your example, going back to your student, you're sitting in a classroom and you have that kind of physiological response.
Right. So if you, for whatever reason, right, if you feel like you're in danger, but you're not, and this can come up in our lives every day for a million different reasons, right? If you have a worrisome thought and then it triggers you to think you're in danger and that there's a threat and it brings you into fight or flight, but then what you worry about doesn't come to be, you're going to now be in fight or flight, but you're not going to need the physiological changes your body has just gone through. So now what? You've got all of these extra endorphins and adrenaline, right? Your breathing has quickened, your heart is pounding, but you don't need it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I've had patients say to me, I feel like I need to run, right? A patient today said this to me. I have this urge, like I just need to get up and run, but like from what? There's nothing to run from and there's no place to run to, and I'm not in a place where I can run. I need to be sitting in class, or I'm at work, or I'm at a show. I can't just get up and run, right? But I have this overwhelming urge to run, right? That is coming from the physiological changes in your body, right? So now, you recognize that there's no danger and you need to regulate yourself, but your body now is full of all these chemicals and these physiological changes that it can't just snap out of, right? We have to regulate out of, right? The adrenaline can't just disappear. It doesn't just get sucked into a vacuum, right? So do you know what it feels like in your body when you have all this adrenaline that your body doesn't need? You know what happens to your body?
What happens?
It feels really warm and it sweats. That's what the sweating is.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's adrenaline. Yep. Also, there's a stress hormone that is released in these situations called cortisol. And when our body starts to become flooded with cortisol, it does shut down digestion. It shuts down our prefrontal lobe, the part of our brain that like thinks and reasons. So that's why it can become very difficult for somebody who is in that fight or flight stress response to have rational thought or to be reasonable. Like if somebody is like in the middle of a panic attack, you can't be like, everything's fine. That doesn't work, right? Ever seen anyone in a panic attack?
Yes. I'm just thinking my first panic attack and I was curled into a ball in a McDonald's, like underneath a table in the most disgusting McDonald's in Manhattan.
Was I there?
No, it was with Jen.
Okay.
And like just rocking back and forth. And it was gross. It was really, it was late at night. It was disgusting. And like, didn't matter because I just needed to crawl into this ball and like hide and rock. And yeah. So rationally, I mean, it was the grossest place to be. No one would ever lay on that floor.
Nobody wants to lay on the floor at McDonald's, whether it's the middle of the night or 10 in the morning. No.
But yeah, I mean, there was no rational thought. It was just, I thought I was having a heart attack.
Yeah, you are in those moments, you are totally in your emotional brain, right? You're in the downstairs brain, the amygdala, the part of the brain that regulates fight or flight and emotion, and it doesn't think. That part of the brain does not think. And so the prefrontal lobe, the part of the brain that reasons and thinks, is offline. It's not working. So you can't just go to somebody who's having a panic attack and be like, it's just Uncle Joe. Everything's okay. It's going to be all right. We have to give the body, once we recognize that there's no danger and there's no threat, we have to give the body the time to regulate itself. But what becomes very difficult for people and why panic attacks tend to last for a very long time is when you don't understand what's happening to you and you're experiencing these feelings, right? That tightness in your chest or that pain in your chest that you might experience, that's your heart rate and your quickened breathing trying to regulate itself, right? Your breathing is quickened and you're trying to slow it down, right? And your heart is palpitating and it's trying to slow down and get back to a regular pace. And so you might feel a tightness in your chest. It might feel fluttery. It might feel uncomfortable. And somebody might experience that as, I'm having a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
Something's wrong.
Yep.
Right? What's wrong with me? Right?
Which then creates more anxiety and worry and prolongs that rocking back and forth underneath the McDonald's table.
Right. Exactly. So if we don't understand the physiological changes that are occurring in our body when we're in fight or flight, it only makes sense that we're going to reignite the fight or flight response by reacting to fight or flight with, holy crap, what is this? What's going on? People often flood emergency rooms with these fears that they're having a heart attack or that they're dying, right?
Absolutely.
A lot of patients will come to me and say, I thought I was going to die.
Yes.
I thought I was having a heart attack. I thought this, or I thought that, which here's what happens in these scenarios. That experience is so traumatizing.
Yes.
That the person now becomes hypervigilant around the fear or the threat
of that happening again.
Of having a panic attack. Yep. They become so anxious about anxiety. They start to panic about panic, right? And so what we now fear is fear itself, right?
Yep.
Famous quote, right? And so a lot of clients will come in and just be like, I don't know what I'm anxious about. I just feel anxious all the time. And they have what's called generalized anxiety disorder, right? So some people just have generalized anxiety disorder. Some people have panic disorder. Some people have generalized anxiety disorder with panic. They're not panicking all the time. They're panicking sometimes. But even when they're not panicking, it's just this feeling in their body. It's a felt sense. And what's going on is that they're hypervigilant. Their emotional brain is always just about ready to go. And the way I like to explain this to children, if any of you out there have kids who have anxiety, who are listening, I try to kind of like help them imagine their brain almost as if it's like, this little chamber, right? Picture this empty chamber. And in this empty chamber, this person lives. We could picture this person. We could look for pictures of them online. We can find them. I've had like children bring in pictures to me of like crazy looking people with like big hair, like looking people. And they will bring them in and we will name them. And they can name them whatever they want, right? So this last child I was working with named her anxiety person that lives in her brain Bob. I've had people name it Matilda. People can name it whatever they want. I don't care what they name it. Let them name it something. So this last kid, she named it Bob. Okay, so what I explained to her is Bob lives in your brain. Bob's job is to keep you safe from danger, which is great. That's really important. He has a really important
Everyone needs
job.
a Bob.
Everyone needs a Bob. The problem with Bob is this. Bob is a little bit trigger happy. He's got his finger on the button, right? So there's picture this big red panic button, right? On the inside wall of your brain. And there's Bob, right? Bob is sitting there like this, right? Bob
ready to hit the button.
Is ready to hit the button at any moment. So Bob doesn't give it a second. He doesn't just wait a minute. He doesn't pause to see, is this really a bear?
Assess the situation, to figure
Uncle
it out.
Joe? Is this right? Exactly. So he's just like, danger, 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 right? Anything that could potentially be danger, he pushes the panic button. And as soon as he pushes that panic button, the fight or flight response is released. So now you're going to experience all of the things that we just talked about, right? And so if you are somebody who has experienced adversity, you've experienced trauma, you've experienced scary things, right? You become more hypervigilant. You will have a more sensitive Bob. you will have a trigger happy Bob, because Bob just wants to keep you safe. And Bob believes that there's a lot of danger around. Bob believes anything could be a threat.
FYI, this isn't just a great explanation for children.
It's a really good explanation
It
for
is.
anybody. I know.
I like it better than Uncle Joe and the Bear.
It's a good one.
Trigger happy Bob is a great way to visualize this.
Yeah. So you got to look at your Bob. And you've got to ask yourself, where did Bob come from? We all have a Bob, right? We all have that trigger response to our fight or flight, which is important.
Mm-hmm.
But if yours seems to go off for no reason, if you have that false alarm trigger, what you want to ask yourself is, what might have brought me here? Where's my journey been? Why is it that Bob believes that I'm in danger so much when it doesn't seem to be true, right? And we have to kind of go through this process of rewiring our brain. We have to kind of like look at our amygdala, that downstairs emotional brain, right? That doesn't think and just reacts, and say, how did it become so reactive? What has it learned? And how can I teach it something new? And so here's how we do that. So if you notice that you are hypervigilant and you are reactive to things all the time that are not true, I want you to think about it like this. Think about your amygdala and your Bob and your brain and your panic button like you would picture a smoke detector, right? The smoke detector doesn't think. It's just a machine. And its job is to scream if there's smoke, right? It doesn't know the difference between smoke from the grilled cheese you're burning on the stove because you started to make a grilled cheese and then you started scrolling on TikTok and you forgot you were making a grilled cheese, and now the grilled cheese is burning. Smoke starts to come up from the pan. The smoke detector detects the smoke, and what does it do? It screams, "Brr, brr, 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 fire, fire, fire," right? And you're like, oh, crap, right? So you take the grilled cheese off the burner, you wave the smoke away from the smoke detector, and you're like, be quiet, smoke detector, everything's fine. It does not know the difference between the smoke that comes from the grilled cheese and the smoke that might come from a real fire. All it knows
is smoke.
Is there smoke. However, the way we respond to the smoke detector going off is going to be different, whether there's a fire in your house or you've burned a grilled cheese. Right? And so it is important, if we want to rewire our brain, right? If we want to reprogram our Bob, right? We want to be aware and be mindful of how we are responding to the fight or flight response, to the stress response when it does appear to be a false alarm. So, number one, I want to say, if you find yourself panicking, that's usually a sign that you have received a false alarm. Because the reality is, if you really came across a bear, if there was real danger, you would need fight or flight for survival, right? You would need that quickened breathing. You would need the palpitating heart. You would need all the physiological changes in your body. And it would work for you. And you wouldn't have to go through this regulation process that would cause sweating and tightness in your chest and all of that. So most of the time, the actual feeling of your body regulating itself is usually a sign that it was a false alarm, that it was false danger. I like to say FEAR is false evidence appearing real. It's false. It's not real. It appeared to be real, but it's not real. And so now you've had this triggered stress response that you now need to regulate. Okay. So it's sometimes helpful to see it that way, because that helps you realize my body's regulating itself because I've recognized that there's no real danger. Right. So we want to start with, and I know this is easier said than done. This isn't easy. It's hard, but we want to start with acceptance, accepting that this feels yucky. Nobody enjoys how anxiety feels. Nobody enjoys a panic attack.
No.
Ever.
Nope.
Doesn't feel good.
Nope.
Right? So we want to acknowledge that it feels yucky, but we want to also accept that it feels yucky. Right? Can we, what's our favorite saying? Can we do hard things? Can we tolerate how this feels without reigniting the fight or flight response, right? So we don't want to say something like, oh no, I'm panicking. Oh no, I have anxiety. oh no, I feel sick. What am I going to do? Right? We don't want to say that, right?
Exacerbate that feeling.
Exactly. It exacerbates the fight or flight response. It reignites it, and our panic is going to be more intense and last longer. Right? There's a difference between the panic attack that lasts a couple of minutes and the panic attack that could go on for an hour. And we are in control of that. We decide that without realizing it, right? Are we going to keep
Based
pushing
on
that
what
button?
we're telling ourselves.
Right? Are we going to recognize the fight or flight response that is false as danger? Or are we going to recognize it as a false alarm? So we want to first and foremost start to work on recognizing it as a false alarm, right? I'm feeling hypervigilant right now. I'm feeling unsafe, but I am safe, right? So how we bring ourselves from our emotional brain to our cognitive brain is to notice what's happening, to name what's happening, and to nurture what's happening, right? Notice, name, nurture. If you are with someone that's panicking, it's helpful to do that for them, right? I'm noticing that you're feeling unsafe. I'm noticing that you're in fight or flight. I'm noticing that, that false alarm button has gone off for you. You're feeling like there's a threat, right? Your body has...
So you're assuming we're hanging out with really evolved, educated therapists.
Well, we are teaching people how to do this, right?
Okay.
I teach my patients how to do this, right? So what I will teach them to do is say to themselves, okay, my fight or flight response has gone off. That's why I feel this way. My palms are sweating. My heart is pounding. My chest feels tight, right? I have that warm feeling coming over me. My skin is tingling, right? That is me regulating myself because I went into fight or flight. I sensed a threat. I sensed danger, right? This is my fight or flight. You can call it a code word. You could say, Bob pushed the button again, right? Darn Bob. There goes Bob again, right? Whatever you want to say, name it in a way that recognizes what's going on in the simplest way you can, right? This is fight or flight. This is Bob. We push the button, right? I don't like how this feels, but I am safe.
Are we still in notice, or have we moved on to the next N word?
We're naming.
Okay.
Right? We notice it. We name it. How do we nurture it? We nurture it by saying, this is hard. I don't like how this feels, right? But I know that even though it doesn't feel good, I've gotten through this before. I can get through this again. I can face my distress. And the reason that this is important is it will start to bring you from that emotional brain into your cognitive brain, which means we are going from not thinking to thinking, not reasoning to reasoning. We are bringing ourselves into a place that can help us feel safe because you can't reason with your amygdala. You can't reason with fight or flight unless you bring yourself into a calmer place, right? And so sometimes nurturing it is finding tools and techniques that help. So one of the things that we know is that when we are in fight or flight, when we're hypervigilant, we can help ourselves to regulate by stimulating the vagus nerve. Have you heard about polyvagal theory?
I have.
Okay. So how do we stimulate the vagus nerve? There's lots of different ways to do it. So if we just teach ourselves automatically that when we are, my fight or flight response is triggered, this is really uncomfortable, but we can't just shut it off as much as we want to, right? And this is the mistake I see some therapists making. And this is a mistake I see a lot of my patients making. And sometimes, like what I've learned this week, is that I have a patient who's been making this mistake for 10 years because this is what therapists have been guiding her to do. Therapists have been guiding her to say, I'm going to distract myself. I'm going to look away from the anxiety. Anxiety's over here. I'm going to look over here. Go away, anxiety. I'm going to distract myself by doing something else. So while she's telling me this, I'm asking her, so what do you distract yourself with? And she said, well, I go into my room and I'll start organizing my closet or I'll start cleaning out my drawers. Here's the problem. She has OCD around cleanliness and keeping things orderly. She has some severe OCD about her room. Nobody can go into her room with their shoes on. She can't sit on her bed. If she sits on her bed by accident, she then has to change the sheets and clean them. She has developed OCD around keeping her room in order
because of
trying to distract herself away from panic. So it's a false sense of control over something you can't necessarily control that way. You can't just ignore, look away, avoid. So what she learned to do was to say, I'm okay. This isn't real. I'm going to distract myself and do something else so it goes away. And that has made things worse. Her anxiety has worsened, her panic has exacerbated, and it has developed into a secondary diagnosis of OCD.
Now, would that be the case for everyone?
Not everybody is going to necessarily develop that kind of OCD.
No, but I mean, there might be some value in kind of being able to, like, rather than going down this spiral of, oh my God, I'm having a panic attack. What am I going to do? I'm going to die. I can't control this. Being able to kind of, cognitive, force yourself. I don't know that you can force yourself, but force yourself to think about something different. Okay, I'm not going to think about the panic. I'm going to think of, picture myself on the beach. I'm going to think about vacation. I'm going to think about my dog, like trying to switch your
That's
thought
a healthy
process.
Tool, though. What you're talking about is mindfulness. Let me stay present. Right? What's a safe space for me? Like it's a calm technique. It's a safe space. How can I bring myself into my safe place? I know that I really enjoy the beach. So when I start to panic, I'm going to just sit in the panic. I'm going to accept that it's there because I can't just turn it off. You can't turn it off.
No.
Your body has to regulate, right? We just talked about the fact that our bodies release chemicals and change physiologically. So you can't just snap your heart and your lungs and your adrenaline and your cortisol and your endorphins and all these things
away. Yep.
away.
They need to
Right?
settle back into kind of a homeostasis.
You can't just snap your nervous system back into place. We have to bring it into place. So what are some tools and strategies we can use to bring it into place? We have to sit in it, accept what's happening, know that panic doesn't mean we're not safe, acknowledge it, see it, notice it, say, okay, I know that I'm in fight or flight. But I know that I sometimes go into fight or flight because I recognize that there's a threat, even though there's not a threat. I know that I'm safe. Mindfulness. Where am I? I'm sitting here. I'm on the chair. It's soft. My best friend is sitting next to me. We're having a nice conversation. Let me find 5 different colors in the room. Let me notice something I never noticed before. Bring yourself really into the present, right? Find your senses, find, your place in the moment of right now. Bring yourself here, right? You're bringing yourself out of hypervigilance. You're shutting down the need for the fight or flight to keep reigniting. You don't want to sit there and say, oh no, I'm panicking. What am I going to do? You say, okay, I'm panicking. I recognize that I'm panicking. I know my body needs to regulate and that's going to take a minute. What can I do to help it along? Maybe I can use mindfulness tools. Maybe I could bring myself into calm place so that I don't turn on the fight or flight. We don't want Bob to push the button again, right? If I bring myself into calm place, I notice myself on the beach. These are mindfulness strategies and tools that work. Distracting away by saying, let me engage in a compulsion. Let me go do this instead.
Well, I don't think it started out as a compulsion.
It became a compulsion because what the therapist taught her was not to accept and sit in and use strategies that are helpful. Instead, the therapist taught her to flee, distract, walk away from it, ignore it. Ignore it. If you ignore it, it will go away, right? We can't ignore it. So trying to ignore it, follow me here.
I'm with you.
If we try to ignore something that you can't ignore because it's present, you feel it in your body, that then becomes a threat. Because if your goal is ignore it, right? Give me your hand. Put it down. Ignore it. Can you ignore that?
I can't.
No. So if I tell you to ignore me slapping your hand vigorously and hard, that was a little hard, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm just trying to make a point.
I get it.
If I tell you to ignore that and I keep saying to you, as long as you ignore it, you'll be okay, you would probably start to panic because you can't ignore it.
Mhm.
You feel it. You can't ignore
It's there.
something you
It's
feel.
happening.
It's
Yep.
there. It's happening. So me telling you you'll only be okay if you ignore it, but then you can't ignore it is going to release
More of
a threat response.
Mhm.
You're going to feel like you're threatened because you're endeavoring to do something that's impossible. Right? So don't ignore it. Acknowledge it. Accept it. It's here. It's here and it's yucky and that's okay. Right? So what can I do to help regulate myself? I'm not going to ignore it. I'm going to acknowledge it, but I'm going to try and regulate. Mindfulness is a strategy.
Mhm.
Another strategy, if we want to maybe stimulate the vagus nerve, is certain breathing patterns, right? Like box breathing, right? You inhale for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, and then you exhale for 4 seconds. It's also really effective to take a really big inhale, but then exhale for longer than you've inhaled for. I've talked about this
You did.
before.
Yes.
Yeah, the balloon breathing.
Yes.
Right. So it's an easier way to explain it to kids instead of saying like inhale for 4 and exhale for 7 to say, let's pretend we're blowing up a balloon. Right. So it's a really big inhale and then, right, slow, steady, long exhale. Stimulates the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve extends from the back of your brain down into your body and connects with your organs. And it actually turns on that part of your nervous system that regulates your body back into calm, out of fight or flight, right? It's all physiological. Just like we turned on a physiology, we turned on biology, we can turn off the biology of what's going on. Something else that stimulates the vagus nerve is cold, right? Like we have our adrenaline is pumping and we've got, where we feel warm, we feel hot, we feel sweaty. But now in order to kind of like regulate that down and stimulate that part of our nervous system that regulates the dysfunction, holding our hands under cold water, taking an ice pack and putting it on the back of our neck, holding it on our face.
We just had a self-care training and the woman was talking about having cold packs in her car to just be able to like smash and, put on her when she was having road rage and kind of negative responses.
Yeah. I encourage teachers to have these in classrooms. I encourage parents to have them around, to have ice packs ready to go, have them in your freezer at home. If you or your child is feeling really dysregulated, just holding that in their hands, right? It's just sitting with it. Sit with it. Do your balloon breathing or your box breathing, right? You don't have to talk to or rationalize with the person. Just give them the space to say, okay, we noticed that you sensed a threat, even though everything is okay. And your body went into fight or flight. And now we just need to give your body a moment to regulate itself because you are safe. You're here. I'm with you, right? If you're a parent or a friend or a spouse or whoever, co-regulation is really, really, really helpful, right? You can't reason with someone before you've connected with them. So how do you connect with somebody? Stay calm, right? If your friend is having a panic attack under the table at McDonald's at 2:00 in the morning, don't be like, it's dirty under there. What are you doing? Get out of there. We have to leave. Oh my God, what's going on? You got to just like sit on the floor with them, be a champ, sit on the floor with them and be like, I got you. We're okay. We're safe. We're going to be fine, right? I know you don't feel well right now, but your body needs to regulate itself back to normal, right? So what I'm suggesting to do is don't look away from the panic and the anxiety. Don't run away from it. Don't do that. Face it. Be like, all right, I see you. You're here. What do we need to do?
Acknowledging it. Yep.
Acknowledge it, right? Because if that smoke detector is going off, right, and you respond to that smoke detector like there's a fire every single time there's a fire, every single time it goes off, even if there's no fire, what are you doing? What are you training yourself to do? You're training yourself to believe every time the smoke detector goes off, your house is going to burn down. But it doesn't, right? If you respond every single time, you're training your brain, you're wiring your brain to recognize that every time you get anxious, every time you have that felt sense of anxiety, of fear, that something is wrong. What we want to teach ourselves is that every time we feel this, that doesn't mean there's something wrong. There isn't always a fire. Because if you can start to learn and see that panic doesn't have to lead to more panic. Panic doesn't always mean danger, right? Sometimes there's danger and sometimes it's a false alarm. Your fight or flight response will start to dull. That hypervigilance, that trigger happy Bob will start to calm down a little bit and be like, maybe I can wait and see before I push the button. Right. And so what we're doing is we're quieting down, we're training Bob to be less trigger happy, right? We're less likely to just slam that button for no reason. I've said a lot. Do you have any questions?
No.
Thoughts?
I'm just thinking of me rocking back and forth underneath the table, thinking I was going to die.
Yeah. So you had a blip in your life where those things were happening, right? And so I think that a lot of times for you, if I remember correctly, there wasn't necessarily a thought in your head or a worry that caused it as much as sometimes it was just lights or sound, loud music. Is that correct?
It was a lot of things, but yeah.
But it wasn't always a thought,
No.
right? Right. And so I think it's really important. That's the next piece I want to talk about. This one patient that really inspired me to come in here and talk about this today is, CBT can be really, really helpful sometimes. And sometimes
for a lot of things.
However, not always. Right. And so what kind of tripped her up over the last several years in treatment is therapists constantly saying, let's reframe your thoughts. What thought were you having right before you had the panic attack? And her answer is, I don't know. I wasn't thinking about anything.
But I think that is an important question to ask. And I think that is a helpful tactic. But yeah, I think it's knowing when to use that and when to just sort of stay focused on that. Because most of the time people can't identify. It's not really I was thinking about my mother and I started to freak out.
Yes, sometimes we know what we were thinking, and thoughts can worry can absolutely lead to anxiety, right? Especially a lot of our OCD folks, right? They have an obsessive thought and they can't get that thought out of their head. They ruminate and ruminate and ruminate, and it creates this fight or flight response, and it will turn into anxiety, right? And it's common for people who worry and what if a lot to have anxiety from those thoughts. And so it is sometimes helpful to utilize thought reframing and recognizing your thoughts and understanding that the way we think about things cause the way we feel. However, sometimes there isn't a thought that triggered it, right? It's important to recognize that sometimes there's a history of trauma. And that trauma can get stored in the body, right? We talk about Bessel, right? The body keeps the score. And sometimes it is stored in our body, and it really is what, scientists and psychiatrists like to call a felt sense. And so, for example, for this patient that I've referred to a couple of times here, right? Her having her first panic attack in elementary school, which, by the way, came from having sensory integration disorder and having it not have been evaluated, caught, and diagnosed. So she would get anxious from certain stimuli, right? Like a loud noise or certain sounds or chaos or the kids in the classroom being too loud. These things would trigger her. She, had a couple of panic attacks on field trips because she was in a theater where it was really loud. Had to quit, basketball because the buzzer was too loud. So it wasn't like a thought in her head so much as it was a felt sense, right? It was really more about hyperarousal and thresholds and how her body processed certain sounds and feelings and whatnot. And so it wasn't a thought for her. It was a felt sense that started it in the first place. And then it became PTSD. It became trauma. The trauma of having this anxiety, having this hypervigilance. She learned to be scared and hypervigilant in every environment she went into because she couldn't control the environment. Was it going to be too loud? Was it going to be too chaotic? Was there going to be too much noise? And even though she might not have been cognizant of that, she wasn't thinking about it. She just learned to be hyper aware every time she walked into a place or had uncertainty of where she was going, that her body just felt unsafe.
And automatically responded.
It automatically responded without her thinking about it. So she had years and years and years of people asking her, well, what were you thinking about right before you had a panic attack? And her answer is just, I don't know, which made her more anxious. I don't know. And sometimes with kids, it's like adults will sometimes almost believe that they're withholding information. Right? Well, what were you thinking about? Just tell me what was on your mind. And the kid legitimately doesn't know. And adults legitimately don't know, right? I've had patients like, I was at the supermarket just picking apples and putting them in a bag. And I just started to panic. What's scary about an apple? I don't know. Apples aren't scary. What was it that made me anxious? It could have been a smell. It could have been a sound, right? It could be something that apples remind her of. And it was in her a subconscious mind or unconscious mind, and she was not vigilant of it in the moment. I had a patient years ago who actually had a panic attack in a supermarket when she was picking apples, which is why I brought this up as an example. Turns out her husband likes apples. She was buying the apples for her husband, and things in her marriage were not going very well. And she was really actively and anxiously contemplating what to do about this problem. And so she didn't connect all these dots in the moment. Like she wasn't like sitting in the supermarket thinking,
wow, apples. I buy these for my husband who I might leave.
I'm buying these for my husband and he's a big jerk and I might leave him and I'm really nervous about leaving him. And so basically the apples triggered a thought. Her brain didn't want her to have the thought. It was like, we're fruit shopping right now, dude. Like we just need to get this over with. We don't want to think about this right now. So, but this is all happening unconsciously. She doesn't know this is happening. So the brain is trying to protect her from delving into thoughts about her marriage and about her husband. It's like, we just need to buy the apples and keep going. So her brain processed this as a threat, even though cognitively she wasn't aware of what the threat was. The threat was, I'm going to start thinking about something that's just too much to think about right now. It's too overwhelming. I don't want to think about this at the supermarket, right? But this is all happening in the back of her mind. She's not aware of it. And so the apples triggered a threat response. And so she went into fight or flight because her brain recognizes this as a threat. I'm going to think about something in a place that I can't think about this. Too stressful to think about this at the supermarket. I need to save this for later. But it's here on my mind and the apples are reminding me about it. So, right, she goes into fight or flight, but has no idea why in that moment. Through exploration and therapy, we later realized that the apples were reminding her of her husband who she wanted to divorce.
Yeah,
and divorce was scary.
That's a very loose connection there that would take a while to get to.
Yeah, but in the moment, she had no idea. All she knew was, I'm at the supermarket and having a panic attack. Why? I'm not unsafe. And she wasn't unsafe. But her body processed this as being unsafe because her brain had convinced her body that she couldn't handle having these thoughts, even though she could, because we can do hard things. Right? So what's my point? My point is we don't always know the thought that triggered the panic, and it's not always a thought. Sometimes it really is just a felt sense from trauma that's stored in the body. And it could be a smell or a sound, right? Or just something that's in the atmosphere environment that we're in that reminds us of it, right? A memory could come up. And remember, the memory system of the brain sits right next to the amygdala. So the memory system of the brain can connect to the amygdala, send a message to the amygdala, send off the fight or flight response, have jumped right over the prefrontal lobe, the part of the brain that thinks. So the memory system can trigger off a fight or flight response without us even knowing what just happened. And we have no idea what the memory was.
That's terrifying.
But this is why it's so important when we go into fight or flight, not to panic about the panic, right? To say, okay, my body thinks I'm not safe.
What can I do?
What can I do? I'm here. I'm going to do my breathing. I'm going to take out my ice pack. I'm going to run cold water over my hands. I'm going to remind myself that I'm in a safe place, or I'm going to bring myself to a safe place. I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to recognize where I am. I'm not going to try to run away from it and ignore it. I'm going to face it. I'm going to accept it. I'm going to name it. I'm going to notice it. I'm going to nurture it. And I'm going to recognize that it takes a hot minute to regulate our bodies physiologically out of panic, and that the feeling we have in our body is normal and not a sign that we're having a heart attack and going to die.
And I think that's such a powerful thing to kind of understand. Like, this is what's happening to your body, and it's going to take a few minutes to be able to bring yourself back down, that it's not going to instantly shut off. And even just that understanding, I would think for a lot of people would make them decrease the length of a panic attack, or make them feel like they've got some control over this. Like, oh, okay, this has happened before. What happened last time? I made it through last time. How did I do that? I, walked away. I had a deep breath. I decided not to look at the disgusting gum at the bottom of the table of the McDonald's in Manhattan.
Yeah, I don't like how this feels, but I can do this, right? I
didn't die the last time this happened. I can make it through this.
Right? I've survived it before. I can survive it again. Just because it doesn't feel good doesn't mean I'm unsafe. I can tolerate this, right? And if I allow myself to tolerate it, it will pass faster.
And that's such an important thing to really educate people about.
Right. And it's important for people to realize that there is hope here, right? Anxiety is an important part of our survival. We can't make anxiety go away, right? We can't turn off our fight or flight response. We need our fight or flight response, right? But resilience comes from recognizing when the fight or flight response goes off unnecessarily, and being able to just make friends with that and sit with and tolerate that distress, so that we can rewire our brain to not be hypervigilant to the idea of anxiety, and to accept, okay, sometimes this is going to happen, but I'm okay. Even though I don't feel good, I can still be okay.
Okay.
All right. So I think we're kind of coming to time here.
Yep.
So my last thought, since this is stuff you're kind of hearing for the first time, is there any questions, or is there anything that you want to ask or say or comment on to kind of really provide some clarity regarding a question that our listeners or viewers might have?
No, but I will think of 1,000 things later. As I'm reviewing all of this and thinking about it, I think it was super informative. And I think, the way kind of explaining Bob and the fire alarm, I think having those visuals is really helpful for people to be able to kind of better understand that.
Yep. Yep. And I think, the last thing I'll say is sometimes we notice we get through something scary. Like, you ever go to a doctor appointment and you have a procedure done, and the procedure is a little bit painful, but you get through it. And then when it's over, you suddenly have a panic attack, and you're like, why am I panicking now? It's over. You ever experienced something like that? Like after?
No, but I'm thinking about you and a doctor.
I don't like going to the doctor.
I know.
Yeah, that happens to me. I will be totally fine during the procedure. That could be very painful. And I'll just sit there like, all right, this hurts and that's okay. And then when it's all over, all of a sudden I'm like, I feel like I'm going to faint. Right? That's because my body went into fight or flight while I was having the procedure done. Right? And it was painful and scary, but I masked my way through it. I had to deal with it. I had to sit there, and I was able to do it. But then as soon as it was over, my body's like, okay, it's time to regulate now, right? We have to slow down our breathing. We have to slow down our heart rate. We have to release the adrenaline and the cortisol and the endorphins and all these things that are in our body. And so the body needs to feel these uncomfortable feelings in order to regulate itself back to normal. And my body went into fight or flight because it recognized that it was in danger because it felt pain. So I wasn't really in danger, but I felt like I was in danger, right? So this is the experience. And so it's like, we got to make friends with it because, fight or flight is something we need to live with, but we can definitely retrain ourselves if that fight or flight response is too sensitive.
Retraining Bob.
It is. It's all about training Bob. We got to teach Bob. Bob doesn't know. But he can know. But we
Bob
got to
is
be
teachable.
patient.
Bob is teachable.
Not overnight. We got to be patient with Bob. He's got to learn. We're teaching him a little bit at a time. And if we're patient with Bob, he won't push that button so often.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I'm sure most people with anxiety would be very happy to have a lazier Bob.
Yeah, but they could do it, right? They have to just be patient with the process. And no, I think knowing is half the battle, right? Information is important.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we have these conversations.
Yes.
All
Awesome.
right. We did it.
Yes.
Anxiety. I feel better now because I felt a little frustrated this week. I'm not going to lie. With that said,
That's it.
That's it.
Okay.
We done? Right? All right, pod people, you know what to do. Please, I know that you all know somebody in your lives with anxiety.
We all do.
We all do, right? It's very common these days. So please share this with somebody that it could help. Subscribe, right? We're on YouTube and Spotify and Apple and iHeartRadio, all the places where you can watch or listen to podcasts. Subscribe, share, like, recommend.
Send it to someone who could benefit from it.
Yeah, share it on your social media because you never know who might watch and it might change their life. So that's it.
That's it. We're done.
We're done. Just in case you forgot, I'm Stacy.
And I'm Heather.
And we are Why Do People Do That? We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Why Do People Do That is recorded and produced by Press Record Studios.